Over the surface, beautiful and vibrant, Canada may appear to have an everlasting bright future. But once we dig deep into the surface, we'll find that the country is deep under America's control. Canada has a population slightly less than 40 million, and the USA is roughly 9 times more than that. This scenario is like a mouse next to an elephant. According to Justin Trudeau, it's more like,
while you, my American friends, may be an elephant, Canada is no mouse. More like a moose.
Mouse or moose, it didn't matter for most of the time. The two countries have remained close allies for a long time, with millions of people living and working on opposite sides of the border. However, things might be changing in the future. Newly elected US President Donald Trump has threatened a 25% tariff on all Canadian products entering the USA, which might be devastating for the Canadian economy. Canada, now more than ever, needs to do something before it's too late. This is the story of Canada, America's grip on their economy, and their impending doom if these tariffs go into effect. Economic dependency. Canada is an export-driven economy. Most of its resources come from the mining of crude oils and minerals. Its mineral resources are so abundant that they're mined in almost every province and territory. It is also the leading producer of potash, aluminium, cobalt, diamonds, and uranium. Massive deposits of these minerals keep the game on for Canada, but they also seem to put the country on a roller coaster ride. How so? Let's take a look. Whatever Canada produces, it's most likely that the US is on the receiving end of its minerals, energy, and other products. If we look at the trade between both, the US holds a 56% share of Canada's mineral shipments. Canada is among the largest trade partners of the US. Americans would see this as a blessing, but for Canadians, this is an alarming situation. It keeps Canada dependent on the US due to its huge economic share, and it's only getting worse. Take a look at some numbers. Between 2017 and 2022, the exports of Canada to the US have increased from $293 billion to $438 billion, which is an annual increase rate of 8.35%. In June of 2023, Canada exported 78% of its products and goods to the US and imported around half of its goods from the US. This economic interdependence goes way beyond any other bilateral relations. As dependent as they are, the US influences Canada through major foreign direct investment, tourism, and even monetary policy. Not only that, the US is the largest source of foreign direct investment in Canada, with a whopping $451.56 billion. This foreign direct investment is an example of the US-Canada relations and their commitment to broader relations. But if we look at the bigger picture, Canada is gradually falling into a trade trap that could threaten its economy and its people in the long run. Don't some other countries also depend mostly on their one or two neighbors? Most of them do, but when it comes to Canada, the case is, well, it's different. Is dependence two-sided? One of the biggest fears is, what if the US turns its back on Canada anytime in the future? Will Canada be able to survive that? If I'm going to drop a spoiler, that's happening. But Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau believes this will never happen, as this dependence is two-way.
He would be actually not just harming Canadians who work so well with the United States, he'd actually be raising prices for American citizens as well.
Sorry, Trudeau, but that's not the case. The Americans do not rely as much on Canada as Canadians do on America. How much is the difference? Before we get into that, if you enjoy learning more about today's economic stories, be sure to subscribe and click on the bell icon so you don't miss out on any more of our videos. Back to the question. How is this dependence not two-sided? In 2022, 13.2% of US imports came from Canada, and 17.2% of exports went there. That's nowhere near how much Canadian trade depends on the US. Instead of mutual trade, the US is like an angry grizzly bear, and with Trump pulling the reins, it's hard to see Canada surviving this for long. The US, time and again, puts protectionist policies and free trade deals in place whenever it wants, and that brings trouble for Canada's backyard regarding the volume of the US's trade share. We must remember that the US economy is far, far larger than Canada's and is much more diversified. The US has supply chains all over the world and dominates Canada at every level, be it related to politics or trade. And we all know that the Jungle King doesn't need to negotiate with a squirrel. The US has other major trading partners like China, Mexico, and the European Union. On the other hand, Canada relies almost solely on the US for most of its national GDP. In short, this two-sided dependency may have more dangerous impacts for Canada than on the US if anything were to go wrong. An event like the one that is now knocking on Canada's doors might actually happen once the Trump administration takes office. What does Trump's threat mean for Canada? Weeks after winning the election, Donald Trump cracked a big joke. Trump jokingly said if Canada cannot handle the economic impacts of US tariffs, then it should join the US as the 51st state. While Canada joining the US as the 51st state may be a joke, the part about the tariffs was not. On November 26, 2024, posting on Truth Social, Donald Trump threatened to impose 25% tariffs on Canadian goods until Canada takes any action to stop illegal drugs and migrants. Trump was very serious about that, and when he makes up his mind, nothing's really gonna stop him. That's something that even Trudeau will agree to.
Donald Trump, when he makes statements like that, he plans on carrying them out. There's no question about it.
Everyone is well aware of Trump's tariff plans and immigration policies, but what does this threat actually mean for Canada in the long run? Trump's recent bluff to put tariffs on goods poses a significant challenge for the Canadian economy and its relationship with the US. If these policies are enacted, then there could be increased costs for Canadian exports to the US. It would also potentially bring down competition in the market in key sectors such as automotive and energy. Coupled with that, this move also raises concerns about the possible economic recession in Canada. But how? You see, the US is Canada's only surviving angel. It's the bread and butter of Canada. Higher costs might result in less demand for Canadian products if tariffs are imposed. Along with that, the Canadian industry and the manufacturing sector could suffer losses. Unemployment could be rampant, and there could be a disruption in the supply chains between the two countries. Moreover, these tariffs could impact US-Canada relations and violate existing trade agreements like the USMCA, the United States-Mexico-Canada Trade Agreement. Likewise, if tariffs are imposed on energy and oil, it would really hurt the Canadian economy, specifically the state of Alberta. Lisa Byton, President and CEO of the Canadian Association of Petroleum Producers, says these levies could force Canada to produce less oil. With less production and demand, there could be job losses in Alberta. Not only this, but other serious repercussions will put Canada in troubled waters, as the lesser developed states depend on rich states like Alberta for revenue. These levies will set a major blow to the whole balance of payment. While the Canadian dollar is already struggling due to economic factors, these tariffs will devalue the currency even further. Economic growth could be seriously impacted. With the US holding a big share of Canada's export market, these tariffs could disrupt Canada's trade volumes. Foreign direct investment could slow down, leading to stagnant economic growth. These tariffs would be a nightmare for the Canadian economy. But what would be its political and strategic implication? Let's find out. What could be the political and strategic implications? It's obvious that tariffs of this magnitude could endanger the regional peace and security environment. The US could alienate its key ally and neighbor with these harsh economic strategies. Canada's domestic political situation could be highly volatile, and Canadian leaders would be under immense pressure to mitigate the impact of these tariffs. To address this, Trudeau recently planned to hold a key meeting with provincial leaders to find a solution for this unlikely scenario. Later, Trudeau called Trump and vowed to work more on ensuring border security. However, that seems like an elusive dream regarding the controversial issue of illegal crossings at the US-Canada border. The best thing they can do now is to break free from this trade dependency. But can they do that? Could Canada break free? Amidst all this chaos, what is Canada's way forward? How can it break free from the US-centric economy and trade? Can it even do that? Breaking away from the US will be a long-term solution for Canada. It's not easy, but Canada is trying and has initiated some crucial trade relationships with a number of other countries. Canada has joined multiple trade agreements in the last decade, including deals with Korea in 2014 and the EU in 2016. Another optimistic aspect is Canada's healthy exports to Asia in the last few years. There are also opportunities for Canada in Southeast Asia and Japan. However, Canada's ability to simply clear the deck and move forward without the US is unlikely. Not for now. Struggling to break free from the US is nothing less than a dream for Canada. However, it could achieve a healthier balance. Canada could shift its horizon away from the US by focusing on Europe, Asia, and Southeast Asia, while continuing its trade with the US. Both countries share long borders and cultural mixing. Both depend on each other for key mineral resources, automotive, agriculture, and raw materials. While it may not be possible for Canada to completely break free, it will be able to self-sustain despite any tariffs. Maybe not now, but soon. But that's what we think. Let us know what you think. Do you think Canada could pivot away from the US-centric policy? What could happen if Canada and the US ever go into a trade war? Let us know in the comments section, and stay tuned for more economic stories.